Welcome back to the Commitment Issues podcast. I'm Woody Wommack, joined by Rob Cassidy, the original cast members back in action. Rob, you were on vacation last week. Welcome home. How excited are you to be back on the podcast with yours truly?
Yeah, it's a nice little reunion. Nick Kruger in Rio helping with Yahoo Sports coverage of the Olympic Games, where he sure will be encountered by giant spiders and broken shower heads and everything else that's happening in that Olympic Village. You and I are in the comfort of the United States, in two different cities, but it's good to be back with you. I mean, it feels like, I've got a little bit of nostalgia. I'm tearing up here.
Well, Nick's used to having all kinds of problems at his apartment. I think when he moved down to Texas, he was having flooding and stuff like that. So I'm sure he can roll with the punches down there in Rio. It's been surprisingly, it's a short week. Nick and I recorded towards the end of last week, but we've got all kinds of stuff happening. I guess we should start off with Sunday night, or Monday morning at midnight. All of a sudden, the new rule went into effect where coaches could favorite and retweet recruits. And I know you and I were texting. Obviously, our timelines were murdered. Coaches were digging up tweets from almost a year ago, some of them. And it was insane. What was your initial take on coaches being able to flirt with prospects via Twitter?
Well, here's my thing. They were digging up year-old tweets. What do they think here? Like, what's the thought process? It's like, what is, like, the number one player in the country going to be sitting there and is like, I was really going to rule out Alabama, but, Nick Saban Nick Saban obviously not on Twitter. Mario Cristobal liked my year-old tweet, so I'll probably go there now. I don't understand what the thought process is there. I guess I get the larger thing where if you interact with these kids on Twitter, everybody wants to be shown love. But there's no way they can think digging up your old tweets and retweeting them is like helping them or helping them get. I don't know what it really accomplishes except for annoying everybody. I don't think any player is looking at that and being like, well, he really likes a lot of my tweets. I guess I better sign my letter of intent with this school. I don't know. It just seems silly. Maybe the only thing sillier than that, though, is the way reporters reacted to it, I think. There were people tracking. So a coach would like or retweet somebody's tweet, and then a reporter would let the world know that this coach retweeted this tweet. Is there anything more mind-numbing in the world than that? I mean, I don't...
It was pretty bad. I actually saw some stats. Some people were keeping track of how many people, how many retweets were given out by a certain staff and et cetera. I think Tennessee obviously led the way. I know you and I interact with a lot of Tennessee coaches on Twitter. I think what was your...
I unfollowed anybody that retweeted more than 5 tweets in that first hour. So I only paid attention to it for an hour. I was looking at it. And if I saw you retweeting 5 tweets in my timeline or more and you were a coach, you were done. So, there were some Tennessee coaches that got it. There were some from the West Coast, the area I used to cover, that got it. K-State coach got it. I mean, man, I was really, people were getting got.
Well, I hit the mute button on a lot of them. I also did the undo retweets. I also had to mute one of our coworkers who will remain nameless for the time being, but he was killing me, so he had to go as well. So I'm ruthless when it comes to Twitter and blocking and things of that nature. And if I could probably unfollow some people, I would. But I do, at least. I don't know what you do. I do communicate with the coaches via direct message on Twitter. What I thought was interesting, at least from our perspective, you did get a small window into, okay, if this kid has Tennessee as his leader, for example, and when the 900 Tennessee coaches and support staff people were retweeting everyone, if they ignored that kid, it probably means they're not actually recruiting him. So, I mean, there was a small piece of news in there. I also found it interesting to see coaches retweeting recruiting news, like stuff we had written. Now it seems like maybe it'll help our page view numbers, at least if coaches are putting stuff out to their audiences.
Yeah, and how about Kiffin? I mean, he was probably, that was probably the shot that was, most heard, right? Was Kiffin retweeting that story and writing a tweet that said, "There's lots of elite talent in Tennessee, but it's all leaving the state," as if he wasn't hated enough around there. He just had. I mean, what a heel move.
Yeah, that was legendary. And he's been spending a lot of time in Tennessee. They have Jacoby Stevens as one of the top players in the country. He's in Tennessee. He's one of their top targets. So I think he was definitely trying to make a move there. Kind of interesting, just the whole dichotomy of it all. I think I'd imagine the rule's not going to change. I don't think anyone's going to overreact to this. I just think coaches went a little overboard to start, and I can't imagine it's going to continue. I think now it'll just be, a situation where if they want to show a kid love, they will. If a kid tweets a picture of them with a coach, maybe if you or I write an article where a coach talks about how he likes a kid or a kid likes a coach or etc., they'll get retweeted. But I think for the most part, it's kind of stupid. I don't know. I don't see it having a big impact on recruiting, except for maybe it's just another way for coaches to let kids know they're not interested, kind of by ignoring them, which we all know they do via text messages and phone already when they're trying to get rid of a kid.
The most annoying thing that this could become, and like I said, I don't have like a hot take whether I think it's good or bad. I don't think it really affects it either way. Who really cares? Other than people annoying me, is. So a coach retweets a prospect, and we know how much these prospects like everybody to know that they're being recruited. So they're going to take screenshots of this tweet has been retweeted by whoever and then post that. Then what if the coach retweets that and the kid then retweets a screenshot of that, and it becomes a vicious cycle that never ends? That's what I'm hoping does not happen.
Well, that's what was happening with reporters saying, because what was interesting about the reporters retweeting the retweets is...
Now, think about the sentence you just said. This is so insane.
You couldn't tell. For example, Zach Kazani, the Tennessee wide receivers coach, I think he retweeted every single tweet from Jeremiah Holloman, who's a three-star wide receiver.
Sure did.
So then you had people retweeting those tweets, but and then saying Tennessee's coach retweets this, but you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell he had done it. You're still only seeing the original tweet from the kid. So it was a total disaster. It's confusing.
There were people covering Twitter activity on Twitter. Like that's what it became. I mean, it was like it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. Really, it's like reporters reporting on tweets via Twitter.
Well, like you said, Nick Saban doesn't even have a Twitter, so, and Kiffin, I think, only tweeted 3 or 4 times. It was interesting to see, like I said, Butch Jones went ham, and I think some other schools did some stuff. So, anyway, kind of much ado about nothing in our opinion, except for it was a little annoying from our perspective.
And maybe not annoying is not even the right word. Just kind of like surreal and weird, maybe. I don't know. It was just, I don't really have a take on if it's good or bad for recruiting or whatever. It was a nuisance.
Another thing we've been seeing on Twitter, at least the past 2 days, official offers can go out. Now this is, for people who don't know, a lot of kids say, oh, I've got 90 offers, because a coach has verbally told them, you have a scholarship offer to play at our school. Now, starting on August 1st, they can issue official offers. So I think we saw some schools, They used to come in the mail. Now I think they just send them via Twitter. I saw some. I think Oregon was doing videos, 10-second videos introducing the offers, and we saw a lot of kids putting them out. But you've got kids. Even kids who are top 100 kids who only get maybe 4 or 5 of these things. I don't think very many kids get more than 10. At max. So this is when you have guys who say, I've got 90 offers. It weeds things out for us. But the problem, I think, is, I even had a kid DM me and say, hey, I've only gotten offers from Cincinnati and Marshall. Does that mean those are the only schools I can commit to now? I was like, well, you'll have to ask the coaches. Yeah. But even the ones you get the official letters from doesn't mean it's not a contract offer. They can still
you can't
tell
sign that and send it back. It's another layer of stuff that doesn't mean anything in recruiting, which is like the last thing recruiting needs, right? Like we already have verbal offers that don't mean anything and verbal commitments that don't mean anything. Now we have official offers that don't mean anything. So really, it's just another layer of crap at the end of the day.
What I would like to see is, I would like to see these written offers be binding. Wouldn't that be something and then we'd see even fewer go out. If you're Alabama and you send one of these out and the kid says, anytime now between now and signing day says I'm taking it, you have to take them. That would be a crazy thing. But I think that would be better for the kids. Which
none of them would go out until the week. Well, none of them from the top tier of schools would go out until the week of signing day.
Yeah, but it would create an interesting game of chicken, because if you're the number one player in the country and you haven't received one from X school, and say Texas has sent you one and Alabama hasn't, well, I mean that could definitely add a layer wrinkle of it. I think.
Yeah, but what if you have the letter from Texas, but Alabama's retweeting you all the time? Then it's still cool, right?
I'm just saying, a lot of these rules are obviously they're set by the schools. People say the NCAA. Well, of course, we've had the NCAA tell us we're just made up of member schools. We're not, some big bad governing body where the schools decide what the rules are. They vote on them. So, the rules do not benefit the kids in any way, shape, or form. So it would be nice to see. It would be nice to see these schools kind of be tied in. It does provide another layer, though. I mean, it's we really need to come up with some sort of what is that graph called? It's the circles.
Venn diagram.
Yeah, we need a Venn diagram. Who got an official offer and who got retweeted?
Because there's only two things that matter in recruiting these days.
And if we put together that type of algorithm, you could find out who each school's top targets are. So maybe somebody, our analytics team, can get on that. 538. If we could partner with 538 and have them help us out. So anyway, that's what official offers mean. I know I had a lot of people asking me it, but I mean, think about it. The recruits don't even know what it means. That tells you how.
Well, the recruits don't really know what anything means a lot of the time, like especially in this process, because you only go through it once and you can't fault them for it. But everything is so murked up with just like everything's foggy. Nothing really means anything except for a signed letter of intent. So it's just a bunch of like created fantasy that may or may not mean something when it comes to February. And, that's tough. That's tough for me to wrap my head around as an adult, let alone a kid. Oh, you mean just because a guy sent me a letter that said they were offering, they're not really offering? I don't know what to tell you.
It's weird. Well, so another situation that was really weird and kind of made some headlines. I was actually surprised it didn't make more national headlines, especially because of the time of year it is when only boring baseball is on and nobody cares about baseball.
One half of this podcast cares a lot about baseball.
Yeah, well, that's exactly how much the ratings have gone down over the past 10 years. One half. Todd Harris, who's a 4-star Rivals 250 kid out of Louisiana, the New Orleans area, he announces on Twitter on Sunday, hey, I'm committing at 5 p.m. Central Time. This was about around 5 Eastern, sometime in that window, because then I obviously started freaking out because I didn't know where he was going. He recently got offered by Alabama. LSU's in the mix. He's from Louisiana. He had a top 3 of LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss. So his coach puts a picture on Twitter. Hey, he's announcing at 5 Central. They had something at the school. I think some reporters came out from the local newspaper. And it gets to be 5 Central Time, and all of a sudden nothing's happening. I'm sitting on Twitter refreshing. I saw a bunch of other reporters and even other kids, hey, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? And then sometime around, I think 5:30 Central, so an hour and a half, almost 2 hours after his initial tweet, he comes out and announces that he's committing to play for his high school team for his senior year.
Jesus.
So not only was the whole thing a farce, it was planned ahead of time. The kid had never had any intention of announcing his college decision, and basically wasted a bunch of people's time. Now, afterwards, the coach came out and said, "Hey, this was my idea. I set it up," which I think a friend of the show, Jimmy Smith, who works for the paper down in New Orleans,
the Times
came out. He came out. I think they like to call themselves, some type of
trunk.
Yeah, some type of trunk type. I think it's called the NOLA Media Group or something like that.
It's trunk adjacent.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about him, trolling reporters and people tweeting how funny it was and stuff like that. I kind of want to get your take. I know I'm sure it made me mad because I was in the middle of. I just moved into a new house. I'm trying to put together furniture, unpack boxes, and I spent 2 hours trying to track it down. So what was your take from the outside, kind of just viewing it all go down?
Yeah, it didn't bother me. It wasn't my state, so I didn't have to do anything. But, and I'll ask the same question that I ask about a lot of things that these coaches do. College, high school, professional on some level. Who was this for? Like, did he think that this was going to, fire his team up? We weren't going to try really hard this season. But since our best player had a ceremony and really committed to our team, we're going to try a little bit harder to win some games. It's symbolic for who? Is it supposed to make a statement? It's just the most, corny football coach thing that you can possibly imagine. It's right up there with taking the advice of or lying about taking the advice of the janitor on a recruiting, on a recruiting visit when you're going to see a kid. It seems like one of these football coach things that only football coaches would do. Can you imagine a basketball coach doing something like that? There's just no way. It's just the most good old boy Southern football coach crap. And, I don't care. It didn't waste my time, but, I definitely rolled my eyes at it.
Well, so here's what the coach said. His name is Paul Di Stefano, which, both of us being of Italian descent, would have some choice words for him, I think, if this were off the air. He said, there's so much going on with social media and recruiting. It can overshadow everything. Our deal was this. We want our guys to understand how fortunate they are to go to a school like Palicamine, or however you say, some Cajun name, where they have the opportunities academically and athletically. Todd is committed to our team and always has been. Today was just a way of show that as we get focused for our season.
So, let's follow the logic here. The kids, the other kids on the team is who this was for. So they're sitting around and they're probably they were taking everything for granted before this announcement happened. And then once that announcement happened, they all got in a circle in somebody's basement and were like, you know what? We're really fortunate to be here. It's such a great school. Because that happened, I appreciate what I have more. I'm sure that is what took place. I'm sure that at the expense of reporters and everybody else that, sacrificed their time for no reason. But I'm sure, whatever helps the team win games, even though this definitely does not. I don't know what that statement even means, really, the more I think about it. It was a stand against social media, but it was all over social media. It took over social media. Whatever. I just give the shoulder shrug emoji.
Well,
it was a stunt that was made for social media. To be honest, if you think about it, if there was no social media, this stunt would never have been pulled because nobody would have ever found out about it, right? So the only reason that this guy was allowed to pull this stunt was because of the existence of social media. So you can't rage against the machine here when you're playing into it at the same time. You just can't.
Well, our boy Jimmy Smith, as mentioned prior, wrote a column. I believe it came out. It came out yesterday, where he really let the coach have it. So I thought it was interesting. The problem is the kid gets caught in the middle once again. You have a grown-up who is viewed as some sort of advisor in the kid's life or whatever, his high school football coach, and then he does a stupid stunt. The
more we talk about this, the more angry I'm getting. I heard about some of those DMs he sent Jimmy, accusing him of not having a real job. And say what you want to say about recruiting, and he's yelling at Jimmy about profiting off of kids and whatever. But you just use the kid as a pawn in your game against social media. So, do I live in a glass house? Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't be throwing stones here. But, boy, to come off so pious about this and then to act like we're the ones that, have caused this big problem when, meanwhile, you're doing that? I don't know, man. Maybe keep your own house in order.
Yeah, so needless to say, I don't know if honestly, Todd is a very nice kid. We don't like to talk a whole lot because we don't know the kids that well, but I've dealt with him a lot. He came to the 5-star challenge. He's always been a very nice kid to me, so I'm sure he was kind of following orders. But yeah, definitely, I hope this doesn't become a trend. Luckily, I think come the bad press, maybe we'll take care of that. But this is because I could definitely see coaches do this. You see kids do it on Twitter. It's one thing to tweet and say, "Hey, I'm committing at 5," and then at 5 tweet, "I'm committing to my school for my senior season." That would be one thing.
But to have a press conference and have people drive to it.
Right. That's the thing is, especially on a Sunday afternoon, during a time where stuff is slow and we have a chance to catch our breath.
Well, and the other difference is a kid doing it on Twitter is a kid doing it on Twitter, not an adult trying to. I seriously don't know who it was for, and that logic in that statement. It doesn't make any sense. And you and I have reached this conclusion a long time ago. We were discussing the Virginia Tech coach that claimed to have driven away from a school when a janitor told him the kid he was recruiting wasn't a high character guy. Is these football coaches do things only for other football coaches. Like, this guy did this in the hopes that other football coaches would be like, yeah, way to be a football coach. It's just for other football coaches. That's all it is. I mean, nobody else was like, good one. I don't know.
All right, so I actually had to block a few people who were telling me to stop crying about it and etc. So I just, there's definitely some. And listen, I do put some, as someone who played football in high school and everything like that, I did. Really enjoy my high school coach. I think he toughened me up and things like that. But some of this stuff, I think, especially on social media, you can't complain about social media and then pull a stunt via social media. I mean, I'm with you on that one. So, speaking of football coaches doing stupid stuff, man, oh man, we're gonna try to toe the line here. As our boss, Derek Sampson, big shout, probably is always wondering if we're going to cross the line. We had an incident this past week at Texas A&M where they had a women's coaching clinic. We don't have to get too into specifics, but basically there were some, innuendos, I guess, they used on the PowerPoint presentation, which were pretty inappropriate. You and I had actually talked about this off the air with these women's clinic things and kind of how they were kind of I don't know what the term is.
I tell you what they are is they're definitely condescending and possibly sexist. Like, they shouldn't be having these things at all. Like, the very existence of a women's coaching clinic is kind of like, hey, women have tiny brains that don't get football. We need to set aside some time to really, I don't know. In 2016, it seems like kind of a leap that these things even exist, and I won't even get into the innuendo and stuff that was, totally out of bounds. But just the existence of these things boggles my mind right now. It seems like a very archaic thing. You think these things should have stopped sometime in the 90s.
Well, I'm with you on that one. I think, there are plenty, I think we both know plenty of women who enjoy watching football, and they can talk about it in a normal manner. They don't need to be, they don't need special terminology or special lessons. And if there are people who want to learn the game, I kind of understand, but I just have a football for beginners, and it could be men and women. It doesn't have to be,
women's clinic. Yeah, it's a bad look, and it seems to only this isn't happening in a lot of these Mid-Atlantic schools, right? Like, this is like a very Texas and southern state thing, right? I don't think that Penn State is hosting. But maybe they are. I think they might be. I think they are.
Yeah, I think every school does it to a certain degree to get. Of the coach FaceTime with, it's just trying to appeal to a different audience. But at the same time, I just think, hey, if you want to have a football clinic where the head coach, breaks some things down, I think you just have it for everybody. You have it maybe for kids, you have it for adults who don't know the game as well. But the bigger issue for us now is, from a recruiting standpoint, we look at Texas A&M, and boy, it's just been a rough 9 months here. I mean, I'm trying to think of a similar situation that happened maybe in another sport or pro sports, maybe like the Sacramento Kings or something, because I mean you had, unfortunately it's out of their control, but they're tied in with all the bad press that Johnny Manziel's been getting. We saw Kevin Sumlin get asked about it at SEC Media Days when we were there. Then you have, of course, their quarterback situation. They had their top two quarterbacks transfer to different schools in the offseason. And then you had the coach, you had Tate Martell decommit. You had the coach essentially attack him on Twitter, which led to more bad press.
Then the coach got publicly reprimanded, right, via the Notes app, if I remember correctly.
Right, yeah, then he got in trouble. And then actually, I believe we were at SEC Media Days and somebody asked Sumlin about it, and he got real testy. when asked about that, saying they'd already discussed it. So, and now we have this. It seems like it's just been a rough, it's been a rough few months. And now
you know what would solve this all for them? Is if they had a coaching staff press conference where they all recommitted to Texas A&M in a symbolic gesture. That would make everything go away.
Well, the point is, for me, guess who controls the recruitment of, I don't know, 50% of the players out there? The moms, So now we have a perception of, okay, is this how they're going to teach, my son how to treat women? And at the time where we've already got another school in Texas, facing some issues at Baylor, obviously much more serious than what happened at Texas A&M. But I just don't think I personally, I don't think it's a good look. I think, I don't know what you do if you're Texas A&M, but I tell you what, if they don't have a good season this year and you're running the school there, I think, you might have to think about making a change.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's interesting about that is even that it's gotten this far, because the first 2 years of Kevin Sumlin, this guy was tabbed as an up and coming next big thing in college football coaching, right? And to think that 3 years later, with a bad season, he could possibly be considered to be released or considered to be relieved of his duties. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I mean, who knows? But even the fact that we can have this conversation after what it was 3 years ago there is really, you want to talk about a quick fall from grace.
Well, and I think Sumlin is a good coach, but I just think unfortunately, part of being a college football coach now is you're overseeing the whole program. So you can't have stuff like this happening. And it's one thing if one thing happens, but 3 or 4 or 5 things start to stack up. I personally think it is going to have an effect in recruiting. And I know Texas A&M fans, if they listen to this, will probably get mad at us, but it's just like you gotta, I personally would have just fired the coaches who were in charge of this woman's clinic slideshow. You know what I mean? And just say we're not gonna accept that, especially in the current climate we're in. I just would have said forget it. But that's my personal opinion.
I concur, and I don't know how those coaches are regarded otherwise by Texas A&M fans as far as their recruiting work or their work on the field. But you got to think that if they weren't contributing, they probably would have been let go as an excuse. I mean, someone's got to be looking, and maybe he just is a super loyal guy. There are coaches out there that have trouble firing assistant coaches. He's not the only one. It's possible that that's part of it.
All right, one team that has not had any problems in recruiting, of course, Alabama. They're always near the top of our team rankings. I think they're number 1 right now. They had a huge week. They added, I think since July 23rd, if we go back a little bit longer, they've added 7 commits, I believe, maybe six or 7. The biggest one we saw was Jerry Jeudy. Of course, you were on vacation. Andrew Bone, of Snapchat fame, bothered you the entire time you were on vacation, which was probably could be your rant of the week. But we all knew Jerry Jeudy was going there. He's really close with Calvin Ridley, almost like a de facto brother in terms of their closeness of their relationship dating back 3 or 4 years now. What is it about Alabama that allows them to keep stealing these big-time players out of South Florida? Because, I mean, this is, you got Amari Cooper, you got Ridley, and now you got Jeudy. I mean, it seems like they're just building a pipeline down there.
Yeah, well, that's helped. But there's the obvious thing, obviously. Everybody wants to go play for national championships. And I saw a stat floating around the internet the other day where since Saban has arrived at Alabama, every recruiting class has been part of a national championship team. That's insane. So there's probably a draw for that. Then, there's the Florida pipeline. With Judy's case especially, he's so close with Calvin Ridley. He's seen what's happened with Calvin Ridley over there. They come from similar backgrounds, and it just sets a pace, they're so similar, maybe not players, but they're so similar as in where they grew up, how they grew up. They play the same position. They both had the opportunity, and why not if you're Jerry Jeudy? You've seen the guy come right before you and what he's done there. I think that's definitely helped in Judy's case and with the other Florida players in general.
Yeah, I actually was looking up some stuff I wrote about him a few years ago. I don't know if you got the emails I sent you of some grade A scouting by me back at the Dolphins 7-on-7 in 2014. I was really, really happy with myself for some of those articles I wrote.
Yeah, you saw those hips early, my friend.
Right, yeah, exactly. Good evals by me. I really like Jeudy. I think there's going to be some discussion, at least. I don't know how much about him. Maybe moving up into that 5-star range. I think there's
No,
going to
I
be
think
a
he
debate.
is, and I'll be probably thwarted, but I don't mind going on the record saying Rob Cassidy personally, will be pushing for him to be.
Right, so that's kind of how it works. Rob will be leading the charge on that one. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see the debate, how things shake out. He did do well at our event. He did well at the opening, but more importantly, for Alabama, he provides that guy, and for them to be viewed as a school that is primarily a running school. I mean, once again, they're producing these receivers, and he follows the mold. But you look at the guys they added over the past week. We got Alabama, Texas, Alabama, Florida, Texas. I mean, it's interesting because now it almost seems like, and this is probably something we could talk with Nick about. Texas is becoming as big a state for them as even their in state, and then of course they reach down to Florida. They got a quarterback from there. They got a wide receiver. They got a linebacker. It's just like they can just go get anyone they want, right?
Does the LSU situation play into that? I mean, as much as Miles, I think Les Miles is a great coach. I've been on record saying I think that whole fire Les Miles thing last year was completely misguided. But does the fact that program is now seen as on shaky ground because they may fire him again this year if he has a bad season, is that a boon for Alabama? Because they were pulling kids. The kids that Alabama is pulling out of Texas now are kids that traditionally LSU was pulling out of Texas. Is the way it looks to me.
Yeah, man, and of course the Longhorn. I guess you got to tie in. Baylor's recruiting has gone down the tubes. We mentioned Texas A&M, and then Texas, of course, is still trying to get back. So Alabama's filling the void. I guess you're right. A lot of factors in play there.
And now even add in what's going on at Ole Miss now, who traditionally also recruits Texas a little bit, and now you want to talk about uncertainty over them. It's like Alabama needed some recruiting breaks here. It's really good to see little underdog Alabama get the breaks they need in recruiting so they can get these top level athletes.
Well, it's one of the things that is a misconception. Is always the Bama bump, guys get moved up when they go to Alabama. It's like, how are we supposed to predict that an offensive lineman from Sacramento, California, is going to go to Alabama when we do the rankings? You know what I mean? Like, there's no way. We're not projecting where these guys are going to go when we just had the 2018 rankings meetings. We're not like, hey, this running back from some suburb of Lexington, Kentucky is going to go to Alabama. We better make him a 5-star. You know what I'm saying? So obviously but it's just one of those things that frustrates me. We'll hit a few rapid fire topics as my battery's about to die on my laptop. Here's I'm sitting in a closet recording this.
Yeah, only the nicest at Rivals.com studios, right?
Emory Jones, who is in that 5-star mix as well. We had quite a big discussion on him during those meetings. Those rankings come out next week, starting on Monday. He committed to Ohio State. He was a guy that I think Clemson really liked. I know Tennessee. He was so close to committing to Tennessee that we had the graphics made up and the analysis video. Urban Meyer famously called him and told him, why don't you wait a little bit? We saw that happen with Benjamin Victor, a wide receiver from Florida last year. And now, next thing you know, Emory Jones just committed to Ohio State. So I took some flack on the Ohio State board for saying that they haven't had a ton of success in Georgia in recent years. Of course, they got Raekwon McMillan back in 2014, Von Bell in 2013. But when you're talking about elite guys, we see them go down to Florida, but I personally, I think this is their biggest commitment in Georgia, probably since McMillan.
Yeah, and they still look like to pair him, and not pair him, I guess, because two different classes. You said you've seen the success in Florida. They're still the clear front runner for Trevon Grimes. They're doing well in the Southeast as a whole now. Well, they've always done well in Florida, but if you add, an increased presence in Georgia to that, which, it definitely, as you and I both know, are probably the two marquee states in the Southeast. I guess a case could maybe be made for Louisiana in some years, but not this year. Then, watch out, especially if you're transporting, what they call SEC speed up to the Big Ten. It's not hard to see why they've been so successful in that league in the last few years.
Yeah, they got Josh Norwood, who's a 3-star DB in 2015, but I don't consider Ohio State getting a 3-star out of Georgia or even Florida a big deal. You know what I mean? Because
no. You know who else gets 3 stars out of Georgia and Florida? Nebraska.
Yeah, and
Missouri.
Yeah, my alma mater, UCF, does a great job of doing that. They built their whole team out of it, which preceded
Colorado
games last season. So I did want to talk a little bit about a few other topics, but we're gonna go ahead and jump into the rants and recommendations because I'm in the red zone with this battery. Rob, you got anything for us? I know you've been binging shows on Netflix and the like. So what do you got?
Yeah, I watched Stranger Things on Netflix, which is kind of a horror show. It's kind of got an old school vibe to it. It's off-brand for me because it's kind of like a sci-fi ordeal where, other dimensions exist and monsters and telekinesis and things that I usually do not get into. It was fine. I don't know if it's as good as the internet is making it out to be, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. I think the ending was a little bit weird, but, it's definitely worth your time. There's only 8 episodes, so it's not like you're investing sinking a giant portion of your life into watching this. It's definitely enjoyable. It's not the best show I've ever seen. It's no Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which was the best show of 2015, but it was good.
Wait, by the way, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, 4 Emmy nominations. I don't know if you saw that. So, yeah, the critics agree with you on that one, Rob.
Of course, man. Of course.
Yeah, I think Nick might have talked about that last week. I can't really remember. I don't necessarily have any recommendations this week. I've been listening to a lot of new podcasts, trying some out, but haven't really found anything that fit. A lot of heteronormative stereotype talk on a lot of the shows.
Yeah, hold on. Which podcast was that we were talking about? You want to talk about heteronormative stereotypes? We can talk about those women's camps again. Boy, you want to talk about reinforcing those?
Yeah, I was listening to Malcolm Gladwell's new podcast, which was very interesting, discussing some type of gender issues. The first episode, I think he's like 8 episodes in. I think it's called Revisionist History or something like that. It was relatively enjoyable. I'll keep listening to it. Some of the other ones I listen to though are just to fill the time, kind of like people who are probably listening to this right now.
Yeah. Nobody's recommending this podcast on their own podcast. They're just like
right, exactly. In terms of complaints, I got a whole bunch, mainly related to the car dealership I bought my car from, Mall of Georgia, Chrysler Jeep Dodge.
All right, we're calling them right out now, boy.
Listen, don't buy a car from there. We'll just put it that way. There's been a lot of issues leading to me threatening to drive my car through the showroom floor.
And for people that think you're joking, would you please explain that you actually said this to them?
Yeah, I did say that to them, and I have been known to say outlandish things. I probably shouldn't say stuff like that in a time where people are actually doing stuff like that, but I let it be known that if they didn't fix the malfunctions on my car. By the way, a certified pre-owned vehicle, 110-point inspection. I mean, you may want to check if the car starts on a regular basis as one of those.
That should be the 111th point.
Right. So avoid them. I already went on any form of social media and let it be known that. My experience. So you can go to Yelp, check out the Yelp review if you want to read my complaint in full, all its full glory. Which, by the way, the owner responded to every single Yelp review except mine, which I found, pretty interesting. So, anyway, that's it for this week. Follow us.
Wait a minute. Well, maybe I'll hold it for next week. I've been sitting on a complaint about some shoes that bloodied my feet for about 4 years now, and I've been ready to rip them. And now that we are out of a certain partnership, I can go on how terrible their shoes are. But we'll get to that in another episode.
Yeah, you might have to wait on that. Just a reminder, the Rivals 100 presented by Under Armour comes out next week. If you check that on Monday, you can find Rob on Twitter at Cassidy_Rob. I'm at Rivals Woody. You can find us at Rivals Podcast. Our music, which may or may not be playing right now, depending on how I figure out how to edit this episode together, is presented by the one and only M. Deuce. So
we miss you, Nick.
SoundCloud. Yeah, I'm Nick. Enjoy your time.
And of course, it was not Under Armour shoes that bloodied my feet. I need to point that out.
Maybe it was Sperry's. No. Anyway, that wraps it up for this week. We'll be back with a new episode next week.